What's going on, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. I'm your host, and we got Jordan Wong on the line today. How you doing today?
Hey man, how are you?
Good. So you're just kind of
Yeah,
chatting a little bit before the recording, and I think again the first time we crossed paths was Raw Unity 7, I believe, which is kind of I think that one was one of the most kind of memorable. You know, he had like Andre Milanichev squatting 1,000 pounds, walked out, dunked it. That was in those, among others. You know, Dan Green and. But anyways, for those that maybe aren't aware of who you are, where you're from, what you got going on, if you want to just give us a little intro about all that, and then like any kind of background, as far as how you kind of
yeah.
got started to powerlifting.
Yeah. My name is Jordan Wong. I live in Northport, Florida. I own Showcase Strength and Fitness. We run powerlifting events here in Northport, Port Charlotte area. This is our two, three, four, five, fifth year doing it now. I believe. Yeah, whatever. Fourth or fifth year doing it. We hold about four meets a year under the RPS banner, and yeah, just I've been competing since 2009 when I was 17 years old, 34 now. So I've kind of seen all the different eras of powerlifting, all the eras of lifters, meets, everything, right? I mean, so have you. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Um, yeah,
Cool. And I guess in terms of we'll kind of focus on the events, and you got some big events coming up, but in terms of like your own, I guess, kind of competition arc and everything. Um, what I guess has helped you kind of have like the staying power? I know you had a couple of I don't know how many you probably know better than me, obviously, how many times
yeah.
you broke the squat world record and stuff, but so obviously you've been
Mhm.
competing at a high level for a long time. And I'd say probably in a fairly similar, again, weight either like 220s and 242s mostly. I don't know if you ever kind of went above that, maybe when you were younger, maybe you did some stuff in the 198s, but just tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about your kind of competition career, and then maybe like any, I guess, takeaways that maybe some of the younger listeners can, t listen and kind of hone in on if they want to kind of stay in the sport for like a long time.
Okay. Yeah, so when I was 17, I was a senior in high school. Yeah, senior in high school. I was 17 to my first meet, February 2009, with the APA. Honestly, I don't think they're around anymore. Um,
There's
they
very few, very sparse. Yeah.
okay. So yeah, they were like one of the only federations to put meets on in Florida at the time. There was the USAPL as well, but and not to like talk negative, but back at that time, they weren't really very what's the word? They weren't present much here. So it was really hard to find a meet because back then when you looked up powerlifting, USA powerlifting is kind of all you saw on the internet, but they just didn't really put on a lot at that time period. So I kind of just went one of those close, APA, had a lot of fun, kind of got hooked from there. I was a 198-pound lifter. I was training for about a year and a half on my own at like the YMCA before that. Didn't know a thing about powerlifting programming, just ended up in the bodybuilding.com forums and there's a powerlifting subsection. And then I just learned about meets, tried it out, totaled 1190. And then I just kind of averaged 2 to 4 meets per year since then, depending on like injuries and life stuff. 2000, kind of like you said, Raw Unity. I believe I made it a big goal of mine, funny enough, to just qualify for Raw Unity, which was like at the time, it was a very big meet. And at the time, the qualifying total was 1509 at 220. When you put that in perspective now, it's like not a big total. But back then, that was a little bit above average. So like my big goal is to get to that number, qualify for it. I believe it was 4 or 5 I did. Um, and then it started to grow. Port St. Lucie Raw Unity 7 came up. I did that. That's when I got with Animal Pack. That's kind of roughly the time period where powerlifting was getting a little more popular on social media because of the companies like Animal, the companies like Slingshot, and that Raw Unity meet itself. I think you mentioned Andre Milanichev there, a lot of 1014, brought a lot of exposure to the sport. And then around that 2013-ish time period to 2017, that's when we kind of saw powerlifting really gain popularity, bigger meets come out. And fortunately, I was kind of around just to try them all out. Like the only one I never ended up at was the Pioneer meet in Texas. Um, in that time period, at the Raw Unity we spoke about 7, I saw Dan Green. squat 782 for an all-time world record. And I made it a goal of myself. I was like, all right, I'm going to drop to 220, and I would like to break that record one day. So I did it the next year, broke it at an RPS meet, actually, funny enough, Fort Myers, Florida. Then you kind of mentioned injuries. So shortly after that meet, I had a really bad back injury, um, major herniations in the disc, drop foot. They tried to give me like emergency back surgery, and I passed on it. Luckily, I did because 9 months later, I squatted 800 pounds for the first time. And then it was kind of up and down from there with like injuries, um, kind of growing up because I was young. And then I got like a real job. I stopped busting tables, worked at a gym at a full time plus hours. My lifting kind of took a hit because I wasn't used to really juggling responsibilities. And I really wasn't managing my health very well. Like I was just fattening up, eating bullshit, working at a gym, which is ironic. And then we closed down, opened my own gym up because of COVID and all that. And that's kind of where we're at now. And during that time period, I was really able to like focus on me a little more. I just kind of gained a little more responsibilities, had a kid, uh, prioritized my health. Long story short, 2021, I broke the all-time world record again, 826. It was taken again that day from Joe. He got it back and kind of went back and forth with it for a day. And since then, I dropped to 198 for a meet, and I wanted to break that world record squat. Didn't have a good day. Tore my pec after missing the squats. Um, and then right now, I'm just kind of building back up at 220. So a lot of words because it's been 17 years.
Yeah, so I guess so a couple of things I want to highlight. So I think how many years you said 5. I guess would you say a little bit close to 10 years in when you hit the first world record or like something like in the
It was sixth.
6 years?
So
So
yeah.
so I think that's something I just like to highlight with people like so like because so what I typically found with depending on how aggressive you are, genetics, natural talent, who you're rubbing elbows with. Obviously, you had a great like a lot of great people around you, and I think part of it also too, just you kind of got in at like a good time where like having that exposure to like that raw boom, I think was definitely beneficial. But I think I found that usually like 5 to 10 years is kind of like when you could really see like some major kind of strides in your performance. And yeah, it's kind of funny because I remember those raw unity qualifying standards. You had to be a pretty good like national level competitor, but now it's like you would be, you wouldn't even be like, in the top 100 on open powerlifting with those numbers. It's just really
Oh,
interesting.
dude, probably top 1,000.
It's really
Yeah.
crazy, like how like, and part, we're getting better athletes involved in the sport, and just the sheer number of volume of competitors has grown, leaps and bounds. I remember, before we had open powerlifting, we had Powerlifting Watch, and
Mhm.
that was kind of like where we like would look up the records and stuff and try to, keep tabs on everyone. You kind of mentioned forums and stuff. It's kind of interesting, but in terms of like, one thing I wanted to highlight, like going from just kind of more responsibilities, adulting, if you will, and just having all these other things. Now you're running a business, all these other things. Have been like the major things you've had to change, whether it be your training frequency, duration, just maybe exercise variation? Like, what are some things that you've had to kind of do to keep progressing forward and stay healthy while still juggling, all these other responsibilities?
Yeah. So at first I didn't really realize why that was like why things were kind of getting a lot harder. I mean, granted, I was in the sport for a long time, lots of injuries. Might have probably already hit my all-time strength peak. Like we still don't know that yet. I'd like to think no. But once I started to kind of recognize that, and kind of like you said, like and I'm kind of going off topic here, but during that era when powerlifting was getting popular, the raw powerlifting, like everything during that time frame was you just saw the sport. And then from like 2019 until like now, the stuff that's getting more prevalent on social media is like the lifestyle factors, like the nutrition, the recovery, all the little shit as powerlifters we never really thought of back in the day that really mattered. Because at the time, everyone was just kind of like a bigger, honestly, fatter dude. Like generally speaking, we just ate as much as we could, and that's what we did. So like I kind of continued doing that, like not sleeping, not eating well, um, all that stuff. And then once I kind of became aware of, okay, this shit's actually really important if you're a good lifter and want to get to the next spot. Um, Shit, if you're a new lifter want to get better, like that's obviously going to help start earlier. But at a certain point, we have to start taking that more seriously. So, kind of like to wrap around that question to now is I just prioritize everything, like almost like it's a non-negotiable. So, with the business, I'm here on and off all day from 4-ish in the morning till 8 at night, depending on the day. Um, I've set my life up where I can still prioritize my health, prioritize my training, prioritize my diet. Like I made sure I got this place, built myself an office. I got a refrigerator here, refrigerator, microwave, my food scale, all that, just so I can stay on track. Uh, don't really have the sleep thing down that good yet, but like I work on it, so I'm aware of it. So it's better than it has been recovery wise. And again, like I said, I own a business. So, and luckily, fortunately enough, I've been able to build it to the point where I've had a lot more freedom. And I can kind of go through seasons of like honing into myself and then just maintaining, honing in on the business. So I've really just kind of like we do with training, periodize my calendar to fulfill my goals. So like right now, I got to meet, I'm doing my meet in December. So I have a co-meet director to help me out with that so I can participate. And we like right now that's like the main focus. So like after December, I'll probably take a step back. We have the new year at the gym. I'll set all the systems up in place for the new year and then tackle the business head on, meets and stuff like that. So yeah, I know
I
that was a lot of
no, I think
speaking, but
no, no. The thing I want to highlight is I think the periodization aspect, it makes a lot of sense. And anyone that's kind of more of a programming nerd and stuff understands that, as much as us conjugate people like to say you could just train everything at once, it's good to
mhm,
have it's good to have focuses and like your. And I think that like I'll give kind of credit where credit is due. I think when kind of Chad Smith kind of brought a lot of like the principles from James Smith over to powerlifting, having this like phasic structure approach where, yeah, sometimes maybe
yeah,
you're focused on health, sometimes you're focused on the family and the business, sometimes you're focused on, and you're still like working on things in the background, like you're not completely like letting go of. You still need to have a pulse on what's going on with the business, but yeah, like right now, I know it's like okay, like I'm 6 to 8 weeks out from my meet. Now it's kind of like that's kind of like at least that's how I view it. Okay, now I'm like it's getting to be crunch time where I really got to prioritize my recovery. If you're kind of traveling a lot, if you're and that's like one thing where I think, and I don't know if you kind of deal with this or not, but I know with myself, if there's like a lot of traveling or stuff going on, or like that's the thing, like a lot of driving, or if I'm on a plane a lot, I try not to like kind of set a competition like near those things the best I can if I know because it's just like going to be like less than optimal. Sometimes you got to kind of do what you got to do, but if you really want to kind of have that performance, and I think as you get older, I think that like setting yourself up with that training leading up to it, and like you said, it's really about a lot of times you'll figure out your programming strategy and you'll kind of figure those things out. But yeah, if your lifestyle factor is not in place, your sleep, your nutrition. And I think the big thing I know I've noticed with myself is like it's really the stress management, which is like a weird kind of catch-all. But if you have like, financial issues going on, if you have, relationship problems, it's still gonna have an effect on your training. So um,
mhm.
if you kind of know that maybe your sleep's getting a little wonky, or sometimes fires happen, you got to put them out in your business, right? Something unexpected happens, something breaks, something, there's some sort of, you know, money, you got to like, put money into something that you weren't expecting. Do you have any kind of, I guess, protocols for like, okay, I'm going to push my training a day, I'm going to try to catch up on sleep? Like if like, if, let's say you had a big squat day plan, because I know that's like kind of your bread and butter for like your total, and you just like kind of know it's not happening, like do you like kind of push the day? Do you kind of call an audible? Like how do you kind of like adjust
Um,
when things get like really, or do you just say like, hey, this was the plan and I have to kind of suck it up and kind of do it?
so it depends. So if we use like the squad day, let's just say right now, I have a meet. We're 8 weeks out from this coming Saturday, and this is where lifts start to get pretty heavy. So, and let's say Friday, the AC breaks at the gym, it floods the gym. I'm very stressed. I got to clean it up, throw out a bunch of money, whatever the fuck I got to do. Um, I will more than likely still do the squat. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I still got a day I can sleep, eat, whatever. But it's also one of those things where it's like, okay, and this, I think this has to do with experience as well. So I don't really panic most of the time. So like let's say the goal is 700 for two on the squat bar. And it's one of those things where if I'm warming up, I'm gonna go with the intent, like, okay, I need to either make it happen or just be realistic about how I feel. And let's say I just feel like garbage, I'm gonna probably squat 650 for two because the body doesn't really know the difference, in my opinion, between the 650 and the seven. So I'm still getting the work done. And even though it's 50 pounds off of what I planned on doing, I know I'm still getting something done. I'm confident in my abilities to rebound that week in terms of recovery, fix whatever I have to fix, or just kind of go with the mindset of conditions are never perfect. Some days you just have to make it happen. But if it's something like where I'm very far out from a meet or like what people call the off season, I will, I'll just push it back or I'll just skip the fucking workout. Like it's to me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters. That kind of sets a bad example. If anyone hears like, oh, he doesn't care about lifting, like you can just skip shit. But at a certain point, like if everything else is mostly in line, you're not going to lose strength. Your squat's not going to go down. Your bench is going to go down from missing a workout or two.
Yeah, the way I like to think about it and the way I kind of coach my lifters is the closer you are to like your to game day or your competition, the less flexible like your training should be. So
Yeah.
if you plan 700 for two and essentially, so I would just kind of ask yourself like, what's the intent of the day? If the intent of the day was to strain with a heavy double, if you're within 90% of like what the target was and you were like a little bit under recovered, you're probably going to get a similar like stimulus for that day. So I think that's a really good kind of mindset to have because I think, like you said, uh, and I don't know if this is something I don't know if you kind of have seen this or not, but I've kind of noticed that people, I guess, yeah, and this isn't talking about Colton or anyone else, but there's a lot of kind of talk about people pulling out from meets, right? And that's just something that, for me, I know like if I outside of like an injury or some major like life circumstance, um, things are never going to be like 100% perfect, 100% optimal. People say like all the time too, like, oh, when am I ready for my first meet? It's just, if you kind of sign up to the meet, you kind of commit to the training cycle, do the best you can. And if you have to kind of, make adjustments, just maybe like adjust your expectations for that particular workout or that particular day. So I think that's a really good kind of good mindset is that you kind of go in with the goal in mind and then, adjust by feel. But yeah, I think completely kind of quitting or scrapping it at the first sign of any friction is not kind of realistic to even just like life in general. So I think that's a
Yeah.
good, just like mindset and like frame of mind to be in, whether you're um, talking about powerlifting or you're talking as a business owner. So I wanted to kind of shift gears and kind of talk about the events specifically. And you can kind of, again, set the stage a little bit and maybe talk about how you kind of got into running meets. But I definitely want to kind of hear about the king and the queen of the platform, what the vision is for like those contests, because it seems like it's becoming a lot more popular. You have people kind of coming in from, I think, I don't, is Canada the further? I don't know if is anyone else kind of coming
Um, we
further?
have no, we have someone come from Ireland.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's pretty,
Ireland,
that's,
South America, I believe, Canada.
so you're getting like an international presence, which is really cool. So when you first started running meets, did you have aspirations of kind of taking it to that scale, or is it something that just kind of happened organically over time as the meets got more popular?
Organically. So I opened the gym in November 2020. Didn't have a lot of members. Obviously, new gyms, usually old gyms, even like powerlifting based gyms, don't do very well financially. It's just they're not ran like an actual business most of the time. And that's no like bashing on other gym owners. It's just we've seen it. Like we've seen some of our favorite gyms close down. And you always hear people say never open a gym because of that reason. So in the beginning, I'm like, all right, well, I want to keep this place afloat. How can we make it a little bit of money? Like, and at the time, my rent was, I wish it was still this, but it was like 3 grand or something for a small little place. So like maybe I could come up with half of that from holding a meet in June and then not pay that much rent over the summer and just bank some money to invest back into the gym. So that's kind of what got my so pure transparency at first. It was like it's a financial thing.
Yeah,
Plus I did and like I love the sport. Eventually I wanted to run meets, but I went into it faster than I thought I would. And I kind of started putting details in my mind together with a few friends. And then I kind of overlooked the fact that like I have so many resources in the country, so many resources around here. Where the first meet that we put on, it filled up. And I think that's mainly because of having the gym. So many people wanted to try it out. At least like 30% of the uh, roster at my first meet, the Showcase Super Classic in June, it filled up so quick. I had to do a second day. Like totally didn't expect that. Like Andrew House came down. I was only giving out like $1,000 in prize money too. So it attracted some pretty good lifters off the bat. And I think from there, just having the support I had with the judging, the staff and stuff like that, we put on a really good show, really good meet for the lifters because you got to recognize like we are lifters, so we know what a good meet is. Like we don't give a shit, and I don't want to. So I represent the RPS, and I don't want to
Yeah, this is your.
speak.
But so yeah, so what are the what? So this is good though because I think there's, and I'll kind of piggyback if, but yeah. So this isn't represent maybe all of RPS or whatever, but we're just kind of
Yeah.
speaking from people that got into the sport in like the earlier kind of 2000s.
Mhm.
You've seen a lot of these great meets come and go. We talked about like Raw Unity was amazing. And I'm sure there's certain elements that you wanted to improve on, and certain elements you're like, this was
Mhm.
really cool. Let's kind of keep doing that. So, what are some things that you try to do specifically, and where do you like not, I guess, worry too much about, maybe like I like again, this isn't to throw shade at anyone, but I didn't see any like kind of
Yeah.
firework. That's always kind of the common example, right? So, what are the things that you really think matter in terms of as a lifter, like that makes a good meet in your opinion?
Uh, Good judging. Shit stays on schedule. Not there all night. Good spotting and loading team.
The pacing of the meet, I think, is underrated because
Yeah.
and that can go both ways. I don't know if you've had this, but too fast is also not good. If you're
Yeah.
so there's so yeah. So tell me about like what kind of pacing do you like to have like when you're as an athlete?
So as an athlete, I like a faster pace. Some people might not agree, but the way I see it too, and actually before you kind of expanded on what I was saying, I was going to say clear communication with the lifters. So
Very good.
I pretty much say like, okay, for example, last year's King and Queen of the platform, we had two sessions. We were starting at 8, we'll be done by 1, and that was the bigger like. I don't like using the word amateur and pro, and I'll expand on that in a little bit,
Yeah.
but we had the amateur lifters for session 1 for King of the Platform last year. But for the pro session, again, in quotes, pro, we only had, I think, 20 lifters. And I was like, hey guys, like, we're going to go. We're not going to be here past fucking 6, 7 o'clock. And they knew about it. They had plenty of time to get in shape. And from like a biased point of view, like we're not athletes, but we're strength athletes. And our job is to adapt to anything we are
Yeah.
supposed to do. So if you're not in shape for a fast paced meet, take shorter rest periods. Shut the fuck up in the gym. Like get ready for the meet.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. And that's how I like it. So that's from like a lifter standpoint. I like to be done faster. I don't like having to deadlift and be like, shit, like, should I just drink another energy drink? Like, am I dehydrated already? Like, I'm yawning in between attempts. It's just too long for me, some of these meets. But like I said, it's up to us to adapt. Like,
I think it's good. I think it's important that, and I really want to highlight because I don't think this happens across the board. So, again, kudos to you. And I think part of it comes with experience because people talk about this all the time at coaching as well. I think as a meet director as well, I think if you've been competing at a high level, you also have a different insight uh,
mhm,
to, okay, how do I want to do things? What do I want to fix? And I think that if the lifters understand, so again, not to kind of bounce off, so one of the criticisms of like the IPF, for example, especially like for worlds, is the pacing, and using like someone like Jesus Oliveira is like kind of a good example. Jesus is probably not going to have his best performances at IPF Worlds just because if he's in a flight of like 7 people and he's squatting 1,000 pounds, and the strategy also may need to change. And I think as long as the lifters kind of know going into it, if it's going to be a faster paced meet, um, yeah, you might have to do a little bit of like a strategy call with your coach, and maybe you change your attempt selection a little bit, maybe you open a little bit lighter. That's something that we did with Larry Williams a lot. I would get criticized a lot for it, but we would kind of really only take we would take all 9 attempts, but really we were only taking like 6 like real attempts. Like the opener would almost be like a last warm up. But I would say if
Yeah.
he was very explosive, and if the meet did go a little bit faster, that was kind of in our favor because he wasn't like gassed by the time deadlifts rolled around. So I think that's a great point. Um, so yeah, I think that and then so a couple of things I want to touch on too. So what does good judging mean to you as a lifter and as a meet director? So what are the things that you look for when you're training your judges, and what are the things that you like appreciate if you're like kind of competing on a meet yourself in terms of like the judging standard? We can kind of maybe go from squat, bench, and deadlift, and maybe just talk about
Yeah.
hit on some points there.
So the big thing is consistency, right? So let's say we have a judge where I kind of disagree with, they're a little too lenient on a squat call, or they're a little too much of an asshole on a squat call. Like, because really in the end, across federations, I know this is opening the doors for not shutting the fuck up for hours about judging and controversies, but the way I see it, the rules are written the same for the most part across every
Yeah,
federation.
yes,
And I kind of have a problem with people saying like, oh, it's this Fed's depth or this Fed's depth. It's like it should be consistent across the board. And what I think and what I personally think happens is certain types of lifters, they have a standard for themselves and they project it onto the meets. And projected can mean in a positive or a negative manner, depending on how you look at it. But let's just be real here. Like there's a meet this weekend, controversial squat, all that bullshit again. The meet it was done. It was, from my understanding, it was from like a multiply gym. No shade at multiply. I literally came up with multiply lifters because that's what was around. All my training partners, Chad Walker,
yeah,
Brian Kerr, all those guys, like they all squatted a little high. Like, and what I loved about Chad is he flat out said, like, yeah, like we don't go below parallel. Like that's just what they're used to. So the thing is, and again, people are gonna see that like what a fucking raw douchebag or whatever, but it's just kind of how it is. Geometry is geometry. And then if you see a raw lift get that type of call, it creates so much, I guess the word's animosity in the community, and everyone attacks each other, which kind of leads to different subjects of like how can we fix the issue. And I know I'm going off topic a little bit again, but I think it all kind of circles back to what we were talking about. So for me as like the meet director, I just want to see consistency. I just want to see shit be held to standard. And one, because it just like, okay, for the RPS, right? And I'll just say it, like years ago, it was known for certain meets to have like looser judging. Um, and I know that might not make some of you guys happy, but like even now, like some people still bring it up to me. I'm like, no, dude, like we have consistent judging. It's fair. Some people like it, some people don't. And we're never going to be those douches that are like, oh yeah, here you have to squat to depth. We're going to make you do all this bullshit. It's like, no, we just want it to the book. And unfortunately, what I think happens is if the judges are given appropriate expectations ahead of time in terms of like how to judge by the book, not by their feelings or by their way of lifting, um, that's what creates the quote unquote federation labelings, which I don't think is fair to the federations. So it's not fair that I'm just going to say feds like RPS, SPF, um, the one this weekend, I guess
yeah. So
APF.
this is a whole yeah. So a lot of the people from this is a whole other separate can of worms, which you don't need to get into.
Yeah.
The APO, formerly, a lot of
Mhm.
which is which a lot of the, so APF had some issues. Those people are kind of now APO, and APO is kind of attached to, if you're familiar with WPO, which is
Yeah.
most prestigious or infamous multiply kind of meet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh, so there's and yeah, so to your point, so a couple of things I want to hit on. So in terms of like squat depth specifically, um, is there anything that you kind of like train your judges in terms of like what to look for? Because obviously, like in terms of, do you have them focus on like the hips, like the hip crease specifically, or like I'm just kind of curious if there's any kind of like thing,
Yeah.
kind of for people can maybe kind of understand like what you're talking about in terms of depth.
Yeah. So I mean, in the rule book, there's like they use the same diagram, and I think the wording is hip crease below the top of the knee, but then there's all that the subjective, objective, whatever. Like, where's the hip crease? And then some people it's just harder to see. Like you have short, wide, large people. Like it's you can't see that. You have tall, lanky people. Like their hips are going to go like this if their chest had come down. So it's hard to really give them what they see as depth. It's like, well, your hips stayed in the same spot. So that's for how we tell the judges. It's just go by the book. Don't I always tell the judges too, like if you have to think about it, give the lifter the lift. Like don't take it away because you're second guessing yourself and you don't want to be whatever. And then the big thing though is just really communicating to the lifters what squat depth actually is. So in the rules meeting, I have Trevor Jaffe do it because I have a loud voice like him. Um, he kind of just brings to the lifters, goes over all the rules and stuff like that right out of the rule book, gives examples. The last meet I did, the last two meets, I actually did a virtual rules meeting ahead of time,
Yeah.
and I had a editor kind of put it together for me. But I gave the different examples of squat depth, what's not. So I try to be pretty specific about it without being like. I feel like I'm coming off as one of those overly strict people, and I swear, like I think I'm not, and most people know I'm not. It's just
You're trying
I
to
like
keep,
to
I don't mean to
avoid
cut
the
you off.
controversy.
I think you're, like you said, you're trying to communicate effectively. So if you
Yeah.
if I think setting clear expectations is really important. So how can so I appreciate, and then as a side note, if you do if you don't mind or not, if you want to share that video and maybe that's something we can implement across,
Oh yeah.
I think that'd be great. So anyways, I think that's important. So I think as long as everyone's on, and then the other thing I will just kind of throw in there when it comes to multiply and raw with wraps, when you start to add layers of equipment on top of already large bodies, that can be kind of add another wrinkle. So like if you're like, for example, if you're like wearing a canvas squat suit, now you have like, and if someone's got already enormous quads on top of that, it could be even more challenging to kind of figure out like, okay, well, where does the hip crease, begin, and where is his knee, and so, but yeah, I think to your point, I think that the consistency is like the most important thing. And then the other thing I want to kind of touch on before we move into bench press and deadlift, and I guess this is could be not just about squat, but one of the things, and again, this isn't to point out any particular federation or lifter, but something that I sometimes take issue with is sometimes not necessarily even like a hometown call, but sometimes a lot of times these refs might be, you might have a ref judging who's like in the same weight class as the lifter that's like judging them. You might have a ref that's uh, or like the meet director coaches the athlete that's in the meet. There's a lot of, there's always going to be some bias. And you want to try to minimize the bias the best you can. Maybe the lifter is your friend, and sometimes it can kind of go either way. I know sometimes like sometimes if I have to judge one of my own lifters or someone that I know personally, sometimes I might be like more maybe harsh on them because I want to like make sure there's favoritism is like not kind of seen. So maybe I'm too harsh. So how do you kind of where there could be squat depth or anything else? How do you handle like trying to eliminate bias from the judge? And like I said, because one of the things that I've kind of seen over the past few years is sometimes whether it's John Hack or anyone else, sometimes you can kind of see that the judge is like a fan of this lifter, and it's like how can that person not be biased? And then it's like okay, then it's like so that kind of opens up a can of worms too if the person is kind of fanboying or fangirling over the person they're trying to judge. So I don't know if there's anything that we can kind of do or any ideas in terms of trying to eliminate bias the best we can because there's always going to be some bias, right? So
Yeah, you bring up some good points. I've never really thought about it like that. I will say though, like at our meets, I really believe we don't have that issue. Like it actually is kind of something I was worried about in the beginning, right? So I have like the regular judges that have been around for a while, like Trevor. We have Alexis that comes down. People that have been in the sport for 7+ years, competed often, still compete, and all that shit. But I've also had lifters from my gym start to help out in the judges' chair as well, and they're so damn good. And it's crazy because I think it's because they see it as a challenge. They like this girl Linda just walked in my gym. She's only been around powerlifting like around my meets, a couple other meets back in the day, but she's someone where like, hey, like, what's this rule? Like this specific little costume thing in the rule book. They know everything. And again, they don't go in with like red light attitude, white light attitude, whatever. But they're so objective and they have no problems giving red lights to whoever. So like let's take the bias out of like, oh, we have a big time lifter, but these girls and guys have good friends in the gym that compete. They will red light each other, like without, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
sometimes they get a
so,
little pissy. And it's
so
funny because,
it's the
sorry,
culture. It's the culture you're creating.
yeah. And like we'll have lifters in here. Um, it's kind of ridiculous, but they think since these lifters are not the Trevors and Alexis's and whoever I bring down, they're like, oh, that they gave me a red light. That's bullshit. They don't know what they're talking about. It's like, nah, dude, like I had them back for a reason. They're fucking good at what they do. And Trevor's a big part of our judging crew, and he coaches them up. He helps them out. Yeah. So really, to answer your question, it's something we don't really have to worry about. Like it was in the back of my mind at first, but now I'm just very confident in it. And when I do see a bad call or something, I'm like, okay, like that was completely missed, or something like the uneven lockout. The RPS has like a 5 inch rule, which is so you can't really tell the 5 inch rule and the lockout uneven. You know what I'm talking about? So, like, we'll discuss things like that. And after the fact, I'll bring it up, be like, hey, this is a lift. I saw it here. I'll show the one on Instagram. Let's talk about it. And we kind of interpret it differently and have a discussion and then go on to the next thing. Another thing with bias that we stopped doing, and it was one of those indirect biases too, is everyone posts their training, right? We
Yeah.
have a judges group chat. So like if I have a lifter for my gym that has like weird ass leverages, squat depth is always iffy. Like, is this actually considered depth? Like, what do you think? We've stopped showing the lifter because then we actually look at that lifter extra hard because we know what to expect. And that can kind of swing your thought process one way. So just little things like that we've implemented in communication wise. And yeah.
Yeah, one thing, I don't know if you agree with this or not. I know this is something that I've kind of found at least I'd say it's more common with bigger guys and multiply guys. So something that's been talked about a lot, and again, I'm not sure if if you want to comment or not, but I've heard like during a peaking phase when training is really hard and you start to get really inflamed and you're fatigue, you have a lot of fatigue buildup. Sometimes, and again, I've noticed this with myself personally. This you kind of like squat depth becomes a little bit more challenging because you're just so like like inflamed and again maybe this is more of a multiply thing, but I've also heard this with like raw with wraps and stuff too. And then after like the deload and taper, a lot of that kind of inflammation kind of goes down, and then they might. So, anyways, my point is that you might see some high squats in training, but then their depth is completely fine at the
Yeah.
meet. So at the end of the day, I think it matters what you do on game day too. Like if you're like a little, but obviously holding yourself accountable in your training is going to be preferred. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
that's something too with now that like everyone like posts their training daily, so sometimes you can maybe yeah be biased toward a lifter because oh this person always squats high in training or whatever. So and that there may
Yeah.
be some truth to that, but I think that's
Now, I want to reiterate, like, we don't like if we use an example of a lifter at the gym or post it or whatever, we know we're doing a meet. We don't be like, oh, watch out, this person squats high, watch out this. It's like a genuine question. And it's usually not the squat, it's usually something like the deadlift, where it's like, okay, this person's knees always kind of seem a little like, is that considered soft knees? Is that considered a hitch? Like little things like that. Nothing like as particular as squat depth. We just kind of use it as in like, hey, like just to clarify, because like I said, some of the judges are newer and they're all in the group chats when we get ready for the meet, communication wise, be like, hey, what do you guys think of this?
yeah.
Is this that? Is that that? So
So just as like a little side note, and this could be like a longer conversation, we can continue the conversation. One of the things I brought up to the guys and girls at RPS was I would love to have like and it may be a little bit more instead of having a written like judges test, it would be cool to have like some sort of video component to it. So like kind of like
mhm.
what you're saying, like maybe you have someone like you said that so just so what does soft knees actually look like?
Yeah,
What does a ramp look like? What is support
that's another one. Yeah,
what is supporting on the bar like and then like at what point does it turn into a ramp and what what I mean? So I think that that's like and I think that would be really a really cool way to because then if the more you kind of get more of these exposures to viewing these things, they're going to be able to make those decisions quicker
exactly.
and more confidently. So I really like that.
Yeah.
So
And then with a subject like that, sorry, one more thing. It's
yeah,
if we had to put like a resource together like that, we'd really have to, in my opinion, get lifters of all like shapes and sizes for examples. Because some shit looks way different on different lifters. Like like you and I, like we're not tall people, a little thicker, whatever. But then you have like a tall, lanky squatter, like we're gonna look completely different, deadlift wise, lockout wise on the deadlift. I mean, squat wise on the depth wise on the squat, lockout wise on the deadlift, stuff like that. So yeah, shorter limbs. Like someone like Craig Foster is a really good example. Like he weighs a lot, right? Like he's a super heavyweight. He's not very tall. He's got very short legs and he dive bombs into a squat. So sometimes it's like, is that high? Is he really good at making us second guess it? So we have to get him on weights, like, which is a good strategy. I mean, I personally I think it's a great one, but it's so hard to see a lifter like that. Like, did the hip crease go below to the top of the knee? And then it really kind of brings up to like some sort of interpretation where I don't think you could say there's a black and white good or not because it's impossible to tell with some people.
Yeah, and I think this like you mentioned dive bomb squatting is a good example. I think the speed of the lift definitely matters because obviously if someone's like has a really slow descent, you're
Mhm.
gonna have more time to analyze, interpret that. So I wanted this was great. I want to go a little bit into bench press and I think maybe even spend a little bit more time on deadlift because I think let's go deadlift first because we've been kind of talking about soft knees. So I think soft knees is something that um, is really interesting because if you look at like some of those early like 2000s raw lifters, I feel like a lot of those deadlifts would not pass now. Like there was a lot of
Oh yeah.
it's so the standard of deadlifts in particular, and you're even actually seeing this. I'm not sure if you follow strongman that closely, but even the standard of like what a lockout is in strongman competitions has, people like Brian Shaw are getting people like Eddie Cohen to judge the deadlift, which I think is pretty cool. So they're trying to make people. I think strength sports across the board are trying to, just we're trying to make things better and make things more uniform. So I think soft knees is an interesting one because again we mentioned about different body sizes. First, like a super heavyweight, for example, that's got really, their leg being straightened out is going to look different than someone that's maybe like hypermobile, much smaller, a little bit lankier. So when it comes to like judging the deadlift, um, and we can kind of start off with soft knees, and if there's anything else that kind of comes to mind, like what are some things that you potentially see um, from like a judging standpoint that we can maybe be a little bit more uniform across the board, and then like at what point is it like I've also seen it the other it could be too excessive where like you got to hyperextend the back but your knees got to be straight and like it's almost like you this impossible and obviously like I talked about this with Trevor the load on the bar plus what the lifter's body weight is going to also kind of determine like to what like level they could even balance with that weight
Yeah.
so someone like Hafthor Bjornsson picking up 1,000 is going to look a lot different than someone like Jamal, right? It still might be 1,000, like even regardless
Yeah.
of sumo conventional as far as what the position their back's going to be and how far their shoulders are back, how straight their knee is going to be is going to look quite a bit different on the different body sizes and weight classes and stuff. So, what are some things that you look for um, when it comes to like a deadlift lockout?
So I personally think a lot of people always give squat the whole like spiel of there's so much to look for, the squat depth and all that. But to me, the squat's pretty black and white. Like when you've been around long enough, you know what's high and what's not. With the deadlift, there's so many different things like the hitching, the ramping, the up and down, the soft knees. So the two that I find the most difficult to interpret for judges, lifters, and everything are the soft knees and the soft knees and the ramping. So I'll do the soft knees first. I really feel like it gets missed the most out of all the lifts across the all the meets we see because to me like if the knees are just a little bent they're
Yeah.
technically not locked out so some are like some they're just like, oh, okay, I deadlift back's hyperextended but like the bar just sitting on the quad a little bit they're not locked but to them they feel locked because they think and that could be because poor communication from the judging, the rules meeting, what they're looking up. They think if you're extended all the way back, that's locked out. But a lot of the lifters that extend all the way back like that, they don't lock their deadlifts out because their hips don't go through. and their knees stay unlocked. So I feel like that's something that lifters really get surprised by at meets with red lights is they don't recognize that. And that's more of like the intermediate beginner level stuff. But and with the ramping, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, let's say a lifter has a huge rep, like they go rest on the quads. It's like, oh fuck, that was sorry, dude, that's red lights. But then you have the next lifter, only do it a little bit, and it's not as
Pronounced.
apparent.
Yeah.
It's technically still a ramp, but they're probably going to get white lights. And sometimes it just happens so damn quick. Like the bar gets stuck on the quads, and then they kind of just do that thing where like I can't really set up, but we've all seen it where it hits the quads and they just like lock the knees out and then finish the deadlift. It's like shit. Is that a ramp? Is that not a ramp? And that's where that's one of the ones that like I feel like we have to get a clear
Yeah.
definition of.
Yeah, and I think it gets more and more challenging, I think, with the larger athletes because like literally the bar is like embedded in their quad sometimes.
Yeah.
So you kind of like, so and I kind of was that was something that happened to me a lot when I was a super heavyweight and I felt that like if I didn't get enough speed like initially,
Mhm.
kind of lock it out the best you can and you hope for a down call and you go for broke.
Yeah.
But so yeah, a lot of these super heavyweights almost, they can't really, they almost have to go a little bit below like their max just to, get those clean lockouts. That could be tough. And then
Yeah.
anything,
And what's
yeah, go ahead.
listen, what sucks about that is like in the end, the rules end up being where they're supposed to be, like black and white. So it's hard to be like, oh, well, this guy's a little big. So like we kind of have to give him some leniency because that's not fair to the other lifter and all the shit like that. So it's one of those like middle ground things where there's no like right or wrong answer. It's up for interpretation. Kind of like politics, right?
Yeah, well, I think one thing, and I'm sure so like it's good if you can kind of like look at like their warm-ups and stuff, like is the like the lockout position changing drastically from like first attempt to like third attempt, things like that.
Yeah.
'Cause if they're capable, if they're because then they can kind of if they're if it starts to like and I think ramping especially too because like sometimes like I try to coach our lifters like just don't shove your knees forward like just like try to extend your hips forward if you kind of
Mhm.
kind of sneak your knees under the bar you're kind of playing with fire so just try to like lock out with your glutes and so some of it's just technical things and there's tricks that you can learn and stuff but yeah sometimes the ramps can happen so fast where it's like yeah I'm not really sure if if they did it or not and but yeah, so just slowing things down and just kind of trying to teach them. But yeah, setting that expectation is big. So, and I want to be like aware of your time and I appreciate it. So I want to go into bench press and then we can kind of talk about the king of the and queen of the platform specifically in terms of, what to look out for, maybe some, so anything on the bench press. I know we kind of talked about sometimes the uneven lockouts and stuff. All right, so let's actually we'll highlight one thing because I think this is getting better across the board, but I think it's worth mentioning pausing.
Yeah.
So in terms of like some people think still, yeah, and not, and I think this number of people is getting less and less. They're looking for like a specific length of time versus actually like getting that bar to stop. So sometimes I see this, and again, this is no like Dan Green's a really good example where he would have like a very perfectly timed like almost like a heave, right? Or he would try to like kind
Yeah.
of press and so what are you kind of like looking for, or what do you kind of tell your lifters in terms of, okay, like this is what we mean by pause, if the bar is still sinking into your chest, if it's kind of moving a bit. So how would you kind of explain that to, someone that's maybe just starting out?
So the thing is, the bar has to be motionless, right? So there, like you said, there's no time pauses. So like one of my biggest, I guess, I guess you call it a pet peeve as like a lifter, meet director, like even some of my own judges, I have to be like, why are you fucking holding them so long? Because it's not a pause. Like to me, if I'm head judge on the bench, as soon as that bar is motionless, I say press. And like I'll even get a comment like, "Oh, you give fast press commands." It's like, well, yeah, to some people because the bar is motionless. Some people they have to like search for their chest. It's kind of moving around a little bit, and once it goes, then you can give them the press command. So if you don't really communicate that ahead of time, where it's like you're not pausing it for X amount of time, the bar just has to be motionless. So if you have a newer lifter that's not very confident, they come down a little crooked a little bit. So it's kind of touching on one side. They're going to be like, wow, that was a long press command. And then you have a seasoned lifter, like maybe like someone like Dan, comes in, stops, then you can give the press command. As long as the bar doesn't heave back down and go back up, in my opinion, it's a good lift. So that's the biggest thing, is judges giving too long of press commands. I just don't like it because it's not necessary.
Yeah. And to your point, like with practice, if you're giving commands in training, if you're kind of training up your judges, the more you can kind of react quickly once you kind of see that bar stop. And
Yeah,
I think that like the experience and like kind of confident judges, like they're okay to like give that quick so-called quick press command because they're
yeah.
confident that the bar is actually stopped and I can kind
Hmm.
of get this lifter going. So I wanted to kind of shift gears and just kind of talk about your meet specifically. Anything specifically that you're doing, to separate this meet from others? Maybe highlight some of the lifters. So tell us about like the king and queen of the platform, and maybe kind of a little bit of a preview or highlights of what to expect.
Yeah. So King quit the platform December 6th and 7th. I'm just letting someone in the office really quick.
Yeah.
Um, oh, okay. Let's close the door. Yeah. So December 6th and 7th, King and Queen of the platform. December 6th is the King Day. So that's the men, right? So we have 75 total lifters registered. It is going to be a session to meet. So what I have is a spreadsheet with all the lifters, all their dot scores. And we're taking, I believe, I'm going to finalize it this week, but I believe it's the top 25 um, dot scores on open powerlifting and sleeves because that's who's getting the money. Because and nothing against reps, we just don't have rep competitors down here. We have like one for every 50. So yeah, and then session one is going to be everyone below that. So the goal is to have kind of like the newer lifters from the gym, newer lifters to the sport, kind of have fun, compete, and then hang out afterwards and watch the show, right? One thing my goal for this meet is not to call it a pro meet, not to call it a qualifying meet. I'm like, hey, we're giving out 26 grand over the course of the weekend. This meet is going to be here a year in advance. If you want to register, you want to register. No special treatment. No, like, because you got a big name, I'm going to let you in last minute. And I know, like, that might come off shitty or arrogant, but it's like, I want it to be the highest level local meet that it can be.
Yeah.
And with that type of atmosphere. So, kind of bringing the mix of like good prize money, good standards, good equipment, good communication ahead of time, everything the old meets were missing, but taking those old meets environments and putting them in a nice little setting. I'm not into the big production. Like they put on a good show at American Pro. Like it's fucking cool looking, but that's not my thing, right? Like I'd rather use because we don't have just all the money to throw at
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I don't know how they budget things, but the way, not just American Pro, there's other meets as well that do that. They focus so much on the production stuff. I want to take all the money I can have and put in the pot for the lifters.
Yeah.
So if that means like I just go buy a couple $100 banner and hang it up on the wall behind, like we used to do back in the day, but still put on a hell of a meet where we have the highest level lifters sharing a platform with a 12-year-old doing their first meet, I think it's awesome. It shows what powerlifting really is about, in my opinion.
Love it. And any like I guess lifters to watch or any maybe potential matchups or uh
Oh, dude,
record. I know
so many,
there's so
so many.
yeah, just whatever whatever you if you want to do like the men first and the women or whatever is like top of mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up the spreadsheet right now. It's right in front of me, the King of the Platform Day. I have all the, here we go. So out of all the lifters, we have, I want to say we don't have a dot score under 490 or 495 for that second session. And the average dot score across 75 lifters is like 470. And when
Wow.
you really put into perspective, like we have a 10-year-old kid here lifting with like 100 dot score. You know what I mean? Like, so we have lifters that bring the average down, which is cool. It just shows like how much high level talent's actually going to be here. But yeah, anyways, we have Shane Holler. He won King of the Platform 3. He's coming back to do a meet. He'll be competing with, let's see, you got Patrick Horvath, Patrick McGuire. I'm just going down this list. Seth Albersworth. And I'm gonna have to leave a lot of people out, but I'm just kind of going like the biggest dots we have. on file right now. Micah Marino, he's coming down. Uh, Matt Sherfinsky, to be honest, I'm not sure who that is, but we just have so many 500 plus dots lifters. It's fucking crazy. Justin Zottel, he's got a 574 dots. Craig Foster, Fernando Arias, he's probably in the top three
Yeah,
favorites to win this meet.
yeah.
Johnny Kaufman.
So you should see like maybe 1,000 pound squat, 900, a couple of 900
Oh yeah,
deadlifts, and not too shabby.
yeah, 600-pound benches. Yeah, like I personally think that this has ended up being one of the most stacked rosters in the last couple of years, assuming they all show up. I was actually going to mention that before when you were talking about people pull out of meets because things aren't going well and all that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't know what it is about my meet, but that doesn't seem to happen at King of the Platform. The other quote unquote pro meets, there's always a lot of dropouts
Yeah.
last minute. And I personally, I mean, you can take it how you want, but I personally think it's an ego thing. A lot of lifters like to say like I'm going to hit this in 12 weeks. They kind of strain a pack like mine early or something like that, and it's like I'm hurt. They compete 2 months later at a different meet. So, and it kind of sounds like we're talking a little bit of shit, but I feel like at these higher level meets we do have lifters that maybe do it for certain reasons or whatever, and just get a lot of dropouts. But fortunately, we don't have that at this meet. It's great. They all show up.
Yeah, and I want to speak for you too. I think, and there's a time and a place where, like, hey, if you're like really hurt or whatever, or if maybe
Oh
like
yeah,
if you have a really good opportunity, there's certainly like valid reasons to pull out. But I think that if it's like every time or it's like
yeah,
are you like what are we trying to do here? So yeah, I think that is a testament to the culture that you're building and the lifters that are interested. Because I think there's and I think like for me like again. Um, when we kind of came up with powerlifting and stuff, I know, and we didn't really talk about your prior athletic experiences. I know, like for me, like wrestling was my main sport. I also played football. Um, it just different when you come from a little bit of a sports background. Be like, hey, like sometimes like you're going to be a little bit banged up. Maybe you won't be at your best, but you still got to show up on game day, and that was just kind of like what was drilled into us. So, and again, nothing wrong with that, but yeah, I think it is a testament to the roster and the culture that you're building. So onto
yeah,
I know you got a lot of great ladies too. So
yeah,
what are some of
man.
the highlights for the women?
So obviously the main one is going to be our top two. We have Chrissy Hawkins and Samantha Rice, number one and number two of all time in the world.
That's
They
a
both have
that's
like,
that's a good that's worth the price of admission, just those two.
right? Yeah. And they were supposed to go head to head last year as well. Chrissy was at the gym. She told me she's a little banged up and her quad tore a little bit more than it was. So she showed up with a torn quad, I believe. So
Yeah.
like that should kind of goes against the
Oh,
mentorship I was just talking about.
she's yeah, I think I don't know if it was maybe 2 years ago at this point where she deadlifted like 600 with and her bicep blew off
Torn
or
bicep, 633 at the
um
showdown meet, 2021, I believe.
just like I
Yeah.
mean, again, I have nothing but she's no with all due respect, no spring chicken. I mean,
Yeah. It's a master's lifter.
she's yeah, she's incredible, like in every sense of it. But outside of those, and obviously, Sam is an unbelievable competitor as well. So that'll be quite quite
Yeah.
quite the battle, and I'm sure that'll come down to the last few deadlifts. Uh,
Hmm.
in like that second tier of like women, like any other kind of notable, I guess, showdowns or records potential.
Uh, Going through the roster, we have a lot. We have a big mix of lifters, experience levels. Um, I'm just gonna name a few that just pop out. Like Alex Donald, she's a very strong lifter. Brianna Quintana, she's a USAPL lifter. She's done them all. She's a very strong lifter. Um, a lot of girls that I'm biased towards from my gym that was just like it's so cool seeing how strong they've gotten over the years. And we have people doing their first or second meets on a platform like this. Jennifer Anno's coming down. She always does like the power surge meets. She comes from, I think, Illinois. We have Liz Strange. She coaches a lot of lifters in like the Southeast area. And I apologize to people
Yeah,
I'm
there's
skipping
obviously
over, but there's so many.
yeah,
Samantha Ta, uh,
and I
Shannon Elise.
nice.
Yeah.
Obviously, no disrespect if we didn't mention it. We just wanted to kind of highlight, and then any like I guess and then kind of moving forward, any kind of we kind of mentioned that I want to kind of bring things home in a positive light. So we kind of mentioned some like some of the different drama and issues with some of the records and stuff. So anything like that you would like to kind of see. I really like the idea of like the virtual like the resource for judges training. I think that would be like really amazing. And we can kind of because then
Mhm.
it's like it's always going to be a little bit subjective, but you get more and more black and white, a little bit more. Okay, this is kind of like what we're seeing, and we can kind of all agree on this. But anything, so I think that's like a big thing. Anything else you'd like to see that would be kind of a step in the right direction for like the sport as a whole.
So it's going to take little human error because judges make human, like, you've so many lifts on the weekends, you're going to get some bad calls, you're going to get some gifts. But my goal is to reduce that as much as possible, communicate everything clearly with the judges, what we're looking for, the whole no favoritism thing, um,
Yeah.
all that stuff. But because we have potential for literally some of the biggest lifts ever done in the world, multiple times over and over this weekend or during that weekend. So I don't want to have the meet where it's like, oh, Jordan Wong's meet. They gave us some bullshit world record, and because no one wants to be in that side of the conversation, and then because really that ends up unfortunately being a shit look on the federation, and really there's no federation problems. It's just like judges and meet director problems, and I think it just needs to be um, trained and set expectations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Because
I agree with you. And one thing I'll say, and I don't know like what your feeling is on this, and I think like if it's your buddy or whatever, a little bit of ball busting and stuff is fine. But sometimes like I'm not really a fan of like the comment section and some on some of these posts and stuff. I think like I know it takes a little bit more effort, but I think having conversations like this and actually like train to if you have like an issue with what's going on, like help out at your local meets, train to be a judge.
yeah,
I'm not really a fan of like everyone's like the tough guy, and again, it's totally fine to call out people on their BS, and I think it's good to hold people to a standard, but are you actually doing something about it? So just a little quick story, and then we'll kind of close out. So I had a philosophy teacher in college, and anyways, he went on this rant one day, but it did stick home with me. And anyways, he was kind of on this like rant about like people have like bumper stickers that say like support the troops, or that this is an example that he made. But it kind of resonated with me and something I think about a lot when it comes to coaching, powerlifting, everything else. And he's like, if you really want to support the troops, like you could be on the front lines, you could be helping people, you could be doing this. It's like having a bumper sticker. Anyways, I'm paraphrasing, but the whole premise was like, it's really easy to like just be in the comment section and just talk about like, oh, this is what's wrong with this, or say that you want to support the community or say this, but at the end of the day, like, yes, it's good to start those conversations, but like, what actions are you actually taking in real life to actually support the cause? What are you doing in the case of powerlifting? What are you doing to move the sport forward? Are you helping out at the meets? Are you spotting and loading? Are you getting in the judge's chair? So I think what you're doing is great, having these conversations and just the culture that you're building at Showcase. I want to thank you for that because, like I said, it's nice to kind of see someone. Like I said, sometimes I feel like I'm like spinning my wheels. I'm like, should I even bother? Should I keep doing this? But like again, the sport has, done so much for me. I know it has for you. And I do appreciate what you're doing. And I think it's important that people get involved with their local gyms and the meets and stuff. So any other kind of closing remarks or anything else you'd like to share before we close out the show?
well, I really like that analogy. That was a good one. I mean, obviously a little bit extreme, the whole troop stuff, because you got to change your whole life. But like,
Yeah.
the concept's there. And what I like about, like, I'm just going to use my gym showcase as an example of kind of piggyback off what you're saying is all these people are so new to powerlifting and they're so out of touch with like what you and I see every day, or all the controversy. Like these people don't know shit about that. So like they actually like the sport. They don't do it so they can go post on the internet. They don't do it because like that's what they just see and want to do. Like they actually like the sport. They give back. They show up on their days off from work to help put together the gym, put together the platform. They take time off of work to just set the gym up for the meet or set the venue up, transport stuff. So like kind of what I'm getting at is I urge pretty much all the communities and all the gyms to create a community, like an internal community at said meets, said places to have a really good thing. Because the more that we have, the better the sport's going to be overall. Because in the end, the shit we see on the internet all the time, the shit people always bitch about, that's not what powerlifting's really like. And sometimes it's kind of embarrassing. It's like all the shit you see, it's like, yeah, well, you see what it's really like. Just go to a meet. Because go to a local meet, that's what real powerlifting is. Like to me, real powerlifting is I'll just use the meet. Which one are you here at? June, right? You?
Yeah,
So yeah, you saw on the same day you saw Brittany Bowles. Was it Brittany? She broke a
yeah.
world record
I,
deadlift.
I,
There's
I,
two of them, so
I,
I forgot the names.
I jumped in the chair.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So like you saw that,
It was awesome. It was
but
amazing.
that same day you had three or four like 8-year old girls squatting whatever squatted at 8 years old.
It was really cool.
And the same support for every lifter. And I think the more that we see and the more that we participate in, like go to your local meet, pay the 10 to 20 bucks to get in. Don't bitch about it. Like you're supporting the sport. Like so yeah.
I think every little bit helps, and I agree. I think yeah, and that's another thing. Not to like again because I think having some high production meets is important, but I don't think that should
Mhm.
be like the standard for like. So one of the things we'll kind of leave the listeners. I think that lowering the barrier of entry for running a contest, competing in a meet. So like you said, like you shouldn't have to have, and again, not to be like again, no, this isn't about like anyone in particular, but you shouldn't have to have fireworks. You shouldn't have to have the crazy LED screens. You shouldn't have to have, some, uh, glitz and glamour, DJ, whatever. And I think at the same time too, one of the things I love about RPS is like, and maybe to some extent it costs us a little bit, but like you don't need to have like a membership fee. You don't have to like, we try to kind of make it as reasonable as possible for the RPS and just to kind of get people started. And again, it's all about kind of chipping in when you can. Every little bit helps. So even if volunteer to score, like you said, pay the entry fee, come and watch. Every little bit helps, and even if it's just spreading the message about the meet. So, but I do appreciate you coming on today. Definitely we'll definitely kind of cross paths again at some point. Good luck to all the competitors. Good luck with your training. And then where can people like find, if you want to plug, either your personal, if you want to work at, they find more about showcase events and the gym
Yeah.
in general.
And so I'll just kind of use the Instagram as like the primary source of communication, social media. We have three that I kind of run. It's a personal one. It's my last name Wong Wong, and then STWONG. Little spin Wong Swong. Wish I could say I made that up. I didn't. But then Showcase Strength and Fitness and Showcase Strength Events. So it's been a pain in the ass. It takes a lot of time, but I'm highlighting every single lifter, no matter who you are, from king and
Cool.
queen of the platform, collaborating with all three of my accounts so it gets posted across the board. And like that's what I'm doing for the meets. All updates for the meets are there. The meet schedule, I'll plug the meet schedule in a minute, but
Sure.
uh, yeah, that way you can go into the meet, kind of getting to know, like, oh, this person's done this. This is what they're trying to do. This person hasn't competed in 4 years because they had a baby and all this bullshit. Like, yeah, so I think it's really bringing up the interaction, and I just kind of did it to try it out. And I've had people at my gym just come up and tell me, like, oh, I really like what you're doing. It makes me want to go watch because we know the story behind them. But yeah, and then just to plug the meet schedule for 2026. Holy shit, 2026. We have the Strength of Mania April 18th, uh, the Jeff Brillmeyer Classic. So that used to be the Showcase Super Classic. We retired that this year. We changed it to this one. He was a member at our gym. He died of cancer recently, and he was a big part of setting these meets up, helping with the transport and all that. And without him, like that first meet would have been so hard to put on. So we kind of like honor him for that forever now. August 1st, we're doing a youth meet slash masters meet. So teenagers and under, and then 40 plus, and then fifth
Great.
and sixth next year, king of the platform, queen of the platform, six.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you want to just if you send me any of the notes for the dates because I'll put them in the show notes even just for my reference because I do have a couple of people like I said in my network in your area and I want to make sure that they're aware of all that. But yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate you coming on, man. Good luck with the meet. I love what you're doing. It's great to see that you're still kicking ass and taking names. And it's great to have you again part of the RPS organization. I think you're doing great things. So definitely give Jordan a follow if you don't follow him already. If you guys are in the area or if you just want to go and visit, I think it'd be worth the show, especially for all the big lifts from the men and the ladies showdown. I think it's going to be really epic. I've got to see a lot of those lifters in person, and they're fantastic. So check out Showcase Events and Showcase Gym, Showcase Strength. Thank you guys so much for listening. If this podcast helped you, please share it. Please give a 5-star review. It helps other people find us. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.